Welcome everybody to another episode of the Nerd Continuity, where we talk about design, development, and all the other crazy sort of stuff that we find online. My name is Alex, as usual, the host, whatever. And with me, my co-host is Chris Perko. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
How's everybody doing?
Go for it. Like, you answer first.
I'm doing great. I'm finally settled in Atlanta and ready to make some more videos. So
nice.
Everything's going well. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Finally, a sunny day in Vancouver after probably 7 months of rain and snow. Yeah, I feel sun deprived, and it was like it's kind of like an effect, like a vampire that goes outside in the sun for the first time after centuries of sleeping in a coffin. Yeah, it was nice. So you've been away for 2-3 weeks or stuff like that from the internet. Because you moved. Tell us a little bit about it. What happened? Where did you go?
Yeah, so I was living in San Antonio, Texas, which is very far south. It's a couple hours away from Mexico.
Nice.
My wife got a job here in Atlanta, Georgia, which is all the way on the East Coast. It was about 1,000 miles, which I think that was 1,600 kilometers. So it was a long move, very stressful.
Oh yeah.
And now we're finally settled in, and I feel like I can finally relax and just
do
my thing.
Did you drive there? Did you take a flight? Like, did you drive?
Yes. Yeah. So the last time I moved cross country, we moved our stuff. I drove the truck, and it was horrendous. So this time we paid somebody to take all of our stuff, and we drove across country with our 2 dogs and a cat, and luggage and dog food and bowls, and it was crazy.
I saw that amazing picture that if you want to send me later, I'm gonna put it on top of the video of your dog that didn't want to sleep. It was like sitting, standing. It was like eyes closed because it was falling asleep. Probably. It was so tired, but he didn't want to sleep.
Yeah, he loves the car. He was so excited, and I kept telling him, he had a bed back there. I was like, just lay down, go to sleep. Nope.
He just
fell asleep, staying up.
Yeah, they're stubborn. Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh, that's intense, man. How many hours of driving were?
I think it took about 15. We were originally going to split it up over 3 days and leave Friday night and get here Sunday, like around noon. But Friday night, in attempts to capture my cat and put her in a carrier, she broke a nail. So we ended up spending about 4 hours at the emergency vet.
Oh, no.
So instead of starting on Saturday morning at Houston, we started in San Antonio. We're a good 4 hours behind. And
damn it.
So, yeah, it was... It was an adventure.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I like dogs more than cats, right?
Yes. Just get in the car and just do it.
Yeah, so like, this is exciting. Let's go. No, cats are assholes. So, yeah. Well, I'm glad you're settled and you're back on track. How is that affecting your work? Because you work remotely, like 100% remotely. How that happened? Like, how did you manage to not lose lose your mind and working while moving, while packing, while unpacking, all this kind of stuff?
Weekends and late nights was packing on the weekend. The last few days before we moved, we were very far behind in our packing. So the night before the movers showed up, we were up till I think 3 a.m. just throwing stuff in boxes. So now we're opening boxes and finding things that we're like, why do we have this?
Oh yeah.
After the move though, it's been good because the majority of our team is on Central Time, and now I'm an hour ahead. So after we do a release in a production, I have an hour start on the day. I can get up and make sure that nothing's just completely broken. So we get like a full extra hour of support during the day.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's one of the pros and cons of working completely remotely, is that because of the difference in time zone, probably you're you can start ahead, or you have extra time after everyone went to sleep to be sure that all the things that you did are not broken, or you're not pushing bugs to production and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, so today's episode, we don't have one specific topic. But we have a bunch of different topics, a bunch of news. Some are related to design, some to development, some are more just like general topics about funny things that we found. But yeah, let's start. First, basically, I'm going to start with you because you seem to be kind of the expert here. I mean, I took a look, but I'm not 100% sure what we're talking about. Tailwind CSS is this utility first CSS framework that we talked about probably the last episode or a couple of episodes ago. And Adam, the developer, the creator of Tailwind, just released a new update, the 0.5.1, where introduced this plugin section. What are these plugins? Tell us a little bit about this thing.
Yeah, so the plugins are a really, really cool feature, and I think this is going to really make Tailwind just an awesome tool to use. You know, I've talked a little bit on my series about building custom components, you know, like buttons on your page. You want all your buttons to look the same. You don't really want your HTML to all have these, you know, 10 classes on every single button.
Yeah.
Because when you come back later and you're like, I want to change the border radius, you're going to have to go and find them all. So the plugins allow a developer to create a package basically that could describe what a button is, you know, .btn or .btn primary or, you know, form inputs, and build all these components. And it's written in a really easy to read JavaScript file. And you can then, for the developer consuming it, putting it on their own site, they just go into the Tailwind config file. There's a plugin section, and all they do is just require that file. And all of a sudden they have all these pre-made components. So for a developer like me who really sucks at design, you know, you could make a really cool plugin that is, you know, really beautifully styled form inputs. And I could just grab that, use these classes, and my site now looks amazing. And it also doesn't have 20 classes on a single HTML object.
Yeah, I'm looking at the syntax. It looks really convenient and really clean. The thing that is not clear for me is that, for example, there's the example in the documentation about adding the components for a button. And every single declaration of like the attributes of the button are written as like regular CSS. So 25 rem, the hash of the color, and all the other stuff. It would be possible, I'm not sure, to actually grab the variables that have been declared in the same config file of Tailwind.
Yes, yeah, there is a section on there for referencing the user's config. It's kind of near the bottom of the documentation, but you can grab things like the screen sizes if you want to make sure all of your element works responsibly with the same breakpoints that the user has.
Oh, there
set
you
up
go.
in the
Yes,
file.
references
so, yeah,
the user's config.
Yeah, so you can definitely reference all the variables in the config.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really handy, because it would be kind of like stupid. You define all your spacings, like padding is margins, and then you create the component and you have to redeclare those, and if you change them they don't match. So yeah, that's really great. Awesome. So did you try to create some custom plugins or some custom components implementations for it?
Not yet. I think this was just released 3 days ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I haven't yet. I'm working right now on rebuilding my personal website, and I haven't started yet. I'm still trying to lay everything out. But I'm planning on building all the components as plugins, and that way if somebody wants to reuse kind of my design, they can just grab it from NPM or Bower or wherever and just do a one-line require, and you're good to go.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's something that I noticed because I'm at my office, at my work, we're using Tailwind to rebuild a new version of Ritual Music. And the first thing that I noticed was kind of like weird to implement new things. Or for example, like Tailwind completely lacks a section for CSS3 transitions and animations or transformation, like more advanced stuff. And I was kind of forced to create a separated SCSS file to then import it inside the basic SCSS before the Tailwind things, and then compile everything with PostCSS and Webpack. And that was kind of like convoluted, and using, yes, I was able to use some commands and some specific shortcut to access the config files and import my variables and configuration, but it felt a bit disconnected. Instead, I guess with this thing, it would be really like more consistent to create extra sections and extra stuff, like exactly like the transitions and animation stuff. Quick question. Do you think that because of this component thing now, we're gonna see a sort of like bootstrap type of change in the Tailwind, because now users will be able to create their own themes and components with this new stuff? So pretty much the web is gonna start using pre-built themes based on Tailwind, and all the website will start to look alike or look identical.
I think there'll be a mix. You know, for me personally, if I'm working on a project and I just want to get something started quickly and just get it completed and just have a working product, I'll still grab something like Bootstrap, just because, like, yeah, it looks like every other site out there, but I'm gonna have something working and looking halfway decent in no time.
Yeah.
And on the other side, if you really want something custom looking, you can just use the basic Tailwind classes, you know, right out of the box and make something that looks completely unique. So I think there'll be a mix. I don't know if there'll be any kind of one plugin that everybody's just like a go-to, or if we'll just have like a huge like plugin store and everybody will just be kind of grabbing whatever they like.
Yeah. Awesome. Interesting. Another thing, I don't know if you know this, but I'm curious to test about like the difference in performance, because you can potentially create your own components by using the @apply in an SCSS file. Did you notice any performance differences in like, or it's stated somewhere, if you create a component via the plugin or if you create a component via the SCSS by using the apply method, it's better, it's worse? Do you know anything about this?
I haven't done any like benchmarking or anything. You do have to be careful if you tell something, you know, I want this to be able to have colors and be responsive and be hovered, you know, because then you're going to have that one class become 20, and it's just going to make a really huge style sheet. So there's a lot of consideration in terms of the size of the file.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm not sure if like using apply versus like a plugin would make a difference or not.
Yeah, true. Something that I'm trying to find, and I found some packages that they do something similar, but I'm not 100% satisfied. I would like for like a sort of like postscript, not postscript is not the right thing, but something that runs after you run npm or gulp, that checks your compiled CSS file and compares it with all the classes that you're using in your site or in your HTML static PHP files. And if find some responsive utilities or some classes that are not used at all in your entire site, it just strips them out from the compiled CSS. That would be like super helpful. I don't know if it exists or...
I don't know. I mean, I know I did come across the website the other day, and I wish I had the URL. And you can give it the URL you want it to check, and it'll actually tell you if there's classes that are in the style sheet and it's not being used.
Oh, nice.
But I'm not sure if there's anything that you could run with like in like a gulp file that would do that for you. It'd be a good open source project to...
Oh yeah, that would be helpful. Well, if you can find that website again, I will search it anyway. I'm gonna steal the source code. I'm gonna steal the code that they're using. Probably it's a JavaScript like based something. I will, yeah, definitely. That would be super helpful. Can you imagine like piping the last action to... I'm sure like everyone has pretty much like 45% of their CSS is like useless. It's like never used. Probably
you change things and forget to remove it.
Yeah, or you have all these responsive utilities and then you actually use these small and large instead of different just to have like mobile desktop version, and who cares? Everything else is fine. So yeah, that will help a lot to optimize your assets. But yeah, I think like I'm super stoked about the direction Tailwind is going. Like it's a super new thing. Like yes, 3 months, 4 months old, not even, and already leaped forward in the way how it structures itself and how it allows developers to extend it in ways that other CSS frameworks never did, like Bootstrap Foundation, Bulma, or even like the default Flexbox grid CSS. Everything, it's like pre-built package, you get it. If you want to extend it, good luck. But instead, like Tailwind, it approaches in a completely different way, in a new way, and some hates it, some loves it, but it's like everything else. But I'm super excited about it.
Oh yeah, and just seeing what they've done from, something like Tachyons, which was already, this type of, writing a million classes in your HTML. It's, it's just taken it so much further. It's a really awesome tool.
Yeah, indeed. Awesome. Okay, next topic is something that you proposed based on some considerations and some other stuff related to, probably you saw, I don't know if you saw the first time on Laracast, but I know there's also in the subreddit of PHP that we're talking a lot. There were a lot of like inflamed discussion about this.
Well, that's the PHP subreddit. I mean,
yeah. What can you do? It's just like a trash bin on fire. So
yeah,
you cannot expect anything more. But we're sharing these series from Laracast called Code Reflections. Tell us a little bit about it, like what we're talking about this, what are the main topics, arguments, and then we can chat about it.
Yes, this is something I've been noticing lately, maybe the last year or so. I feel like several years ago we were very, oh, TDD, you have to unit test every single function and make sure everything works on the very small unit level, or following solid principles like to the T, single responsibility and all this stuff that would really in practice it can cause a lot of problems. I, for one, built an application at a job where we did a lot of training on solid. And so we took a small application, we built it, following all the rules. And we had just, for such a simple application, we had so many interfaces and so many classes that had like one little thing in them. And it really became a chore to remember where you need to go to make a change or to add a new feature. So like this code reflections that Jeffrey Way did, I really liked it because he went through and did a refactor on the code base. He's got like an open source forum, and he started pulling out all these pieces of code and putting them in their own classes, and it was very clean and everything. But at the end, when he's looking at the comparison of what it was before to what it is now, he was just saying like, just sit down and really think, is this better than the way it was before? It still works exactly the same. You don't have any new features, but in a few months, when you come back to this, are you going to remember where to go in order to, modify this event that's happening on a model? Or is it better the way it was before, where you just have the events on the model itself?
Yeah.
So it's not solid, but it's easier for the developer.
Just for new developers or unexperienced developer, can you elaborate a little bit more? Can you explain what's like solid means and all the other amazing technical jargons that you just said?
Yeah, so it's 5 principles. There's a single responsibility, which is a class should have one responsibility. I don't really agree with that in a lot of cases. But there's open close principle, which means the software should be open for extension but closed for modification. That kind of goes into the building tons of interfaces. The Liskov substitution principle, which I don't even remember what that was.
Just like old stuff.
Yeah, let's see. I'll just read it. Objects in a program should be replaceable with instances of their subtypes without altering the correctness of that program.
Okay.
Yeah. So interface segregation principle. Many client-specific interfaces are better than one general-purpose interface. Dependency inversion principle. One should depend on abstractions, not concretions. So I don't know. I feel like all this kind of makes the architecture very complicated in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really like it.
That's well, yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's something that I learned while I was learning PHP. It was like really, it was kind of like all over my head. It was really hard to grasp this thing. I was trying to understand. First, I was trying to learn PHP. And that's already a big challenge. It's really, really hard at the beginning. Plus, if you add all those things like, oh, you have to build an interface, and the class should extend the interface, and then every single variable should be type hinted. Even if you're just expecting strings, type hint a string is like, it doesn't matter. And then, all these like extra strict rules that it depends. For me, was like, in this case that I'm building, they're not necessary. It's just like extra work that is not gonna make my application better. And as you said, after 2-3 months, I'm coming back to the application. I completely forgot what I did. It's gonna take me like 3 times more to actually relearn everything that I did and go back and follow all the interfaces and other things that I built in order, just because I wanted to follow those strict rules. Of course, there's always these debate between like really old bearded PHP developers like, no, you have to follow them because otherwise it's going to be chaos, it's going to be madness. And then like new developers, or just even like old developers that they have a lot of years of experience, and they found out those are necessary only in specific moments, are not always necessary. I honestly, like, I don't really understand the necessity of an interface if I have a single class and that's it. Like, I have one class that it doesn't share. Like, I only build interface if I have multiple classes that they have to respect the same architecture and they have to respect the same methods, and I'm expecting the same results for all those different classes. Yes, extend with an interface so everything's consistent, but if you have one single class, do you really need an interface for it? Like, it's kind of like...
Exactly. In that project we did, every class had an interface.
Oh my God.
You know, I want to make a change to my class. Oh, now I have to make a change to the interface. And then I got to go find the interface. And it was a mess.
Yeah, it's definitely a mess. But yeah, it's also, I don't know if, I don't remember where I read it, but probably from the next version, I'm not sure if it's 100% true, if I'm remembering wrong, but from the next version of PHP, type hinting will be required while you run PHP unit to do some test.
Really?
So all the PHP unit tests from PHP unit 7 point something, I don't remember, I'm not sure, but I read this and it was shared between Jeffrey Way and Taylor Otwell, and they were like, oh, I guess I'm gonna stop using PHP unit.
Yeah, that's gonna break a lot of software.
Yes, exactly. That's insane. Is it really necessary to type in? What do you think?
No. I think it can be definitely useful in some cases, especially if you're doing dependency injection. But you know, in languages like PHP, you know, no.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's not necessary. Absolutely. I don't know, man. It's like, it's a really tough argument because there are pros and cons to both approaches, but always, like everything in life, it should be base by base. You cannot generalize on what's better, what's not, just because, like, if you're doing something and you feel like your own project, your small project is like hyper convoluted and it shouldn't be, probably the regular solid approach is not the best approach. And it's okay to not follow it. It's something that I'm not sure if it's stated, or like a lot of young developers know this, but it's okay to not follow the rules. As far as you don't create massive bugs and you don't like destroy your software, it's okay to not be strict on something. You're gonna learn it. You're gonna have time to learn it, and it's fine. It's not that you're a less developer than someone else, or like you're not as good as someone else. It's just like, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen this change in like the TDD I was mentioning. You know, I've seen this a lot, and we practice it at where I work. I mean, I'm lucky to work on a very small team as part of a large corporation, so we get to kind of make our own rules. We're not tied to any kind of big corporate architecture. But you know, I have a function that adds two things together. Like, I don't care about testing that because I'm testing the API endpoint. If I'm calling it through the API, I know it works. If somebody goes and changes that function, then my test that hits the API and gives it two numbers and expects them to be added together, it's going to break. And a few years ago, it was, by the book, like you have to test every function and test the function that uses that function. And it was just, you spend so much time writing tests that you don't even write any actual code.
Yeah, exactly. That's a shitty part. that's
Yeah.
that's insane. Just like to give a little background, TDD is like test-driven development. Basically, it's this strict rule that when you're building something, whatever software you're building, you first build the tests. You build the tests, and all the tests fail because, of course, you don't have a single line of code in your software, and you start building your software in order to let those tests pass and let those tests succeed, not success. But as you said, like, do we really need to test everything? Like, I had a sort of like similar discussion with my junior developer at work. He just came out from university and it was like, no, university, they told me to just test everything, the TDD every time. We're not doing this. It's like, and we ended up, I kind of like, okay, let's try your approach and we're going to see why your approach is like all over the place and we're going to drop it after a week because it's insane. We started building front-end tests with Laravel Dusk to check even like the smallest thing. If I click on the login button, does it open the login form? Do you really need a test for that? It's just, or you just access your website, you click, it opens, it's fine, it works. That's okay. Laravel Dusk is not gonna add an extra layer of security or add an extra layer of, yes, your code is perfect because we have this front-end result. And the same goes for the backend. If you have tests for the core functionalities of your application, like the API endpoints, or if you have a checkout process, you be sure that all the numbers, they respect the same format that you're expecting. It's like something really important. You can run tests. We can build tests for those, but you don't need to build a test just to check if I ask for the user, I get the username back. Like, it's kind of like useless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm personally just kind of following more of a common sense approach. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
just what makes sense. Going back to like solid, how should the code be written that is easy for me to remember what I'm doing? Because I have a lot of side projects. I'll work on it a little bit here, come back to it months later, and if it's not written in a way that I can understand what's going on, then it's crap. Like, it's gonna take me so much time to get ramped back up. So I just try to write it in the way that just kind of makes sense. I like to, instead of writing, like, let's say like an API controller, you hit the controller and it does some magic. Instead of writing the functions that do the magic first and then the controller, I like to write the controller first, because that way I can say, how do I want this code to look when I'm calling it, versus just coming up with the functions first and then calling it. I feel like it just ends up coming out a little cleaner.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Another thing that I want to add to this is something that I don't know if you noticed that, but it's something that I notice a lot with junior developers, is that most of the times, because they rely a lot on testing, they don't actually test, like visually or like manually use the code that they wrote. They write a code, the test pass, they ship it. They don't even put it on a server and test it, or on their local server. They actually use the workflow that they just created to visually see the response in the browser. I noticed this kind of like trend. Oh, the test passed, so I don't need to actually check the website if it's up and running. It's kind of like super, super weird. Like, for me, it's like mind blowing. Like, don't trust the test, because that's also another thing. Like, your test could be written in a way that it passes, but it's not like it is not a representation of your code. It's okay. The test could pass, but your code could have a bug because you didn't write the test to check everything. Probably you wrote a superficial test, something like really, I don't know, not in details and stuff like that. So it's super weird.
Yeah. And when you find a bug, that is a perfect time to write a test so that that bug never shows up ever again.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for this topic. Do you have something else to add to this code reflection other than use your brain and don't follow the rules?
Yeah. No, I don't have anything else to add.
Awesome.
I definitely highly recommend Laracast if you're wanting to get into Laravel or even just PHP. Jeffrey Way has a lot of really good videos on PHP development, unit testing, and like these code reflections. Just use your brain.
Yeah, exactly. Are you planning to start like a PHP class, a PHP series on your channel?
I don't know yet. I kind of want to focus more on JavaScript. I'm thinking about. It's been a long time since I've done like game development, but I'm thinking about doing like a game development in JavaScript series.
Ooh, sweet.
So,
nice.
Yeah, still need to do a lot of research before I'm ready to start talking about it.
Awesome. Okay, so probably next episode is gonna be focused on how to build a game in JavaScript or something like that, right?
Sure.
Sure. No pressure at all. But yeah. Okay, next topic is first generic question. Do you use Google Chrome, only Chrome, just Chrome, forever Chrome, or do you use something else?
Personally, yes. That's kind of my go-to, and I know it's terrible, but that's what I do. But yeah. So I do test on IE and Edge because at work that's what we support. We support IE and Chrome. We also support Firefox, but I think at our organization hardly anybody uses Firefox. For my personal stuff, I'll do a little bit of testing on Firefox and IE. I'm not great at it, and I know that's something I definitely need to work on. One browser that I never test on, and is something I really hate Apple for, is Safari, because I don't own a Mac. I don't own an iPhone.
Yeah.
I don't have a way to run any kind of modern version of their browser easily without paying for like a service like I forget the name of that service where you can test it on like a million different browsers all at once.
Lithium? No, not Lithium. Something similar. Don't remember. Yeah.
Anyways, it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there.
Somebody Google it. Put it in the comments.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so like Safari, and I did have a bug once where I had something working in Chrome just fine, and I sent it to my cousin to test, and she pulled it up on her iPhone. She's like, nothing's working, and it was something in JavaScript that Safari did not support.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty terrible at cross-browser testing. I don't know. How about you? What's your go-to browser?
I'm lazy. I'm the laziest person ever. I constantly jump between Google Chrome and Firefox because mostly of RAM consumption. Google Chrome is like RAM hogging like crazy. Sometimes I have like 5 or 6 browser tabs open, and I have like 4 gigs of RAM occupied by Chrome, which is intense. Like it's really like what the hell is going on? So I switched to Firefox, uses Firefox, but I don't see the hype in this Firefox Quantum. Like I don't see like this huge improvement over Google Chrome, and most of the times the like RAM consumption is pretty similar. So it's just like I keep jumping back and forth, but Google Chrome definitely is my go-to because everything works in it. And that's one of like the strength and the weakness of Google Chrome, I guess. Everything works so damn well in it that you don't stop thinking it's my code that works great, or it's actually the browser that is changing my code to make it work properly. And something that I noticed, I was doing some tests. I want to try to do a video, to make a video on my channel to showcase some specific moment where this happens. And I noticed that for Tailwind especially, like I was using Tailwind with Google Chrome, I accidentally put the font size, instead of 0.5 rem, I put 0.05 rem, which is like probably 1 pixel, even less if converted. And on Google Chrome, it was looking fine because it was outer resizing to make it readable. Instead, on Firefox, it was just like a line, basically unreadable line of things. But Google, like if I was still like, if I didn't check on Firefox, I would have shipped unreadable website with like this super small text. It was just a line, which was like terrible. Even if you write bad HTML, like you don't properly close your HTML tags, you don't use the proper script source or style, href kind of stuff, Google Chrome fixes everything for you. So even if you have multiple bugs, they don't show up. Google Chrome polishes your source code, which is, it's cool, but it's also kind of insane. And we're getting used to it. And especially like the thing in this article that I'm sharing here on The Verge, they analyze the usage of the browsers. And basically Google Chrome has sort of like 60% of the market share of browsers, which is identical to what Internet Explorer 6 had before the birth of Firefox, when it was just like Internet Explorer, probably like Netscape and the early stages of
Netscape
Safari.
Navigator.
Netscape Navigator was the thing, was the shit. But yeah, so everyone is using Internet Explorer. Developers are testing less and less, unless they are forced by corporations like, hey, internally we use Microsoft, we use Windows, so you need to test for this. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's kind of insane. Before, I remember like four years ago, or even up until 3 years ago, cross-browser compatibility was the thing. Like you had to have this, absolutely. And we used to support down to Internet Explorer 9, 10, 11, and then the new version of Edge. But today is not as considered as much. And yeah,
and I think part of that is the browsers have become much better at following web standards. Several years ago, when you looked at like IE 7 or 8, they were horrible at following standards. You'd have to write special code. If it's an IE, use this CSS rule, and so I think that they're following standards a lot better. So, for me, I just go to like caniuse.com and I'm like, oh, can I use this? All right, cool. Like, I'll just trust that it works.
Yeah, true. The thing that I hate so much is how browsers are interacting on mobile or on touch interface. And one of the things that I hate the most is, as you said, Safari. Safari on iPhone is the worst in every sense of the way. I really like, you have so many issues when you're trying to use 100% height or like viewport height for your phone, because when you scroll, the viewport changes, the top bar shrinks with that like elastic animation, your viewport height changes, and your entire site just like janky, jumps, breaks everything. I don't know why. There was a bug, I think they fixed it with the Bootstrap modal in overlay. The overlay, the Z index was creating an issue that was preventing the user to actually tap an input, because it was like sort of like the dark overlay that you have when you open a modal was actually on top, like above the real modal. And you can, like, if you force the overflow hidden of X or Z or Y, that elastic thing that you can like swipe down and refresh the page is half broken. All these kind of like weird things that they don't care to test. They don't care, like they release a new version, and sometimes like iOS 11 has this new bug in Safari, and if you use Chrome, you have the same issue, but if you use Chrome in iOS 10, you don't have that issue. So it's like, Jesus, like I don't have 20 different iPhones to test this thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, but definitely we should not follow the trend of just using one single browser. And I'm seeing more and more recently some like alerts when I access a website with Firefox that this website works best in Google Chrome, which is kind of stupid.
That's just a lazy developer.
Yeah, it's like Firefox and Google Chrome, they almost respect the same standards. They almost have the same, like you don't need to use anymore, even in CSS, the WebKit prefix. Like Firefox and Google Chrome, they have like regular CSS3 declarations. You don't need to use any prefix. But a lot of developers, they don't even care to test it. They test it, maybe they open once Firefox, they see, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, let's put a message that, hey, use Chrome. It's better.
And another thing that just keeps me at Chrome is I have a Google Pixel. So like all my bookmarks and everything on my computer, they're automatically on my phone. You know, I use Gmail, I use Google Docs. It's just everything works so well together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, I don't even want to use another browser because I have all my stuff right here.
Yeah, that's true. Is the ecosystem that messes up, that keeps
Yeah.
us in check. Everything works all together, and pretty much everyone in the world probably uses Gmail.
Yeah.
So you're like, I guess. I tried on elementary OS to switch to Firefox 100%. And actually I'm running the nightly developer preview, which is amazing because it has the new top bar that it's fully integrated with GTK, so everything looks super nice and native.
Nice.
But so many issues in running even YouTube or Netflix. Sometimes I get prompt with the stupid, you need the Flash plugin. What? Flash? It's 2018. I still need to install Flash.
HTML5. Come on.
Jesus, yeah, it was like insane. Or sometimes, yeah, it's kind of buggy. Especially because I noticed that I spend my life on websites that are probably just built by Google itself.
Yeah.
So that's why they work perfectly in Google Chrome, not so perfectly in other browsers. Yeah, it's such a weird thing. Let's jump back a little bit on Safari. Why do you hate it so much?
There's just, when I've tested in the past, I've just found so many issues. Like it kind of reminded me of using an old version of IE.
Yes.
You know, like different sizings or look different, or just things don't perform the way you expect them. And it's been a while since I've even tested on Safari, because I did have a version installed on my work computer at my last job, and I don't currently. And that's just another issue with Apple, how it's so closed. You can't just go to safari.com and download a browser.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, you're not using a Mac, so go away. Yeah.
Install. Yeah, you don't want to be forced to install a virtual machine just for one browser.
Yes. Yeah, that's a pain. Yeah.
Yes. You said that your wife for work was forced to switch to Mac.
Yep. They gave her I mean, it's a nice brand new iMac, and she absolutely hates it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is she using
she's
Safari, or she install, like, you install Chrome?
Yeah, she said the first two things she did was install Chrome and to get the mouse to recognize right mouse click button. So yeah. So
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. I feel like this is like a sort of like side tracking or something, like not related to this topic, but I feel like in terms of user experience, because all of this is a lot related to user experience, we're kind of like backtracking a lot. We're going backwards. Like we reached a point where user experience was good. We were able to pretty much use everything, and everything was kind of intuitive. And now we're trying to remove stuff because, oh no, this is useless. No, no one uses this, and no one uses that. And we're trying to remove, but we're removing too much. And now it's getting like, I don't know anymore. Random thoughts. Okay, next topic. It's related to design. Something that I really, really care about. It's an article from UX Collective, and the title of the article is like "Good to Great UI Animation Tips." Basically, something that it's hard for me to let another developer to understand why animations are important. When I spend hours and hours in CSS training animations, or like I trigger specific responsive thing with JavaScript and trying to, hey, when you click something, you should get a proper response. And if there's a slide animation, the slide animation should follow like a natural slide, and the eye of the user shouldn't get lost. Why all of this is important. You said you're not a designer. You don't feel like you're good at design. Right. But like from your personal experience, have you ever stopped thinking why a website is better than another? If you have like two websites that do pretty much the same thing, or two applications that do the same thing, why one application is better than another? You feel more comfortable?
Yeah. For me, like I can look at websites and tell you like this is a crappy website, or this one looks nice. And a lot of my personal designs are just copies of things that I've seen that I like, you know. But I've never had any kind of training in design. I don't really understand why something looks good. Why do these colors go well together? Why does this font work in this place, you know? So that is definitely something that I don't quite understand. It's you know, I used to always think like design was like, oh, it's just like an art thing, like it's an artsy thing. But there's definitely like a science behind it, and I just don't understand it.
Yeah, it's interesting because even if you don't understand it, your brain automatically gets like attracted, and your eye gets attracted to a good design. Even if like you don't have the technical knowledge to say this is good, this is bad, automatically you lean towards like, oh, this is better. I don't know why, but I feel better with this or using that. Yeah, definitely there's a science, and it's so like mostly like these articles especially, it's really interesting because it like strips away any type of like color or indication or forms or like sizing and stuff like that. It focuses on micro interactions and UX design, how to improve the user experience by adding to your website that already works and already great, really small, meaningful UX interactions and animations. So for example, we have an example here where you have like a sliding tab or like a simple tab with two different content. And the good example is that, yeah, you click on a tab and the content changes completely. But the great and best example is that if you have two tabs, one close to each other, and you tap on one, the actual tab slides from the direction you actually tapped. And it gives, other than giving you a sort of like three-dimensionality of like extra space, so you feel like there's something else outside the screen that I'm seeing. So stuff are physically living around me and they jump in when I call them. It follows your eye and follows your direction, like the direction where your thumb or your finger or your mouse clicks, follows the full workflow that your brain is following. It's not just like a visual jump that you don't understand where it's coming from. Right. Which is like, it feels like a super stupid thing. And sometimes when I'm designing or developing this thing and I'm spending hours in doing prototypes to show them, hey, I want to do this transition, I want to do this animation, this interaction. They don't really realize, my clients or coworkers or stuff like that, they don't realize like, this is kind of useless because the site works. Why you're spending so much time in adding this thing?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess, at the end of the day, businesses look at like what you're spending your time on. Is your product done? Can it sell? Okay. Why are you making it look prettier? True. But I mean, those interactions, I mean, you go to like I think it's called Code Drops. I don't know if you ever read their articles. Like they have some amazing interactions that are just so fluid, and it's like, man, like I want that on my site. Like,
yeah, I don't know. Like those guys are incredible. They started doing that website, like I guess like 4 years ago, when no one pretty much knew how to properly use CSS3 animations, and they were doing all these crazy stuff with zero JavaScript. And I was like, oh my God, what is that?
Going from like the jQuery animations where it just like constantly changed the CSS over time to the browser actually just handling it, and just made it so much smoother.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you don't have any like CPU hogging or like you don't consume like thousands of gigabytes of RAM and stuff like that. But yeah, those are perfect examples, because even if you actually, let me open this website. I'm gonna use my really noisy keyboard.
With your new fancy
yes, exactly. I spent the entire night just like putting back all those things. Okay, Code Drops, this website is the shit. Like if you're thinking to, even if you're just like a front-end developer, or you want to just give that sparkle of UX interactions to your website, you don't care about design, just follow these examples. Are all freebies. You can grab the source code and implement it. They're mostly based on just standard CSS. And the thing that surprises me is that how much I want those type of interactions that are just examples in a real website. How much I want actual websites to use those things, because they're so easy to use. they don't lose me, and it's not boring. It's not a boring experience, and it's not even like wrong. It like feels so natural and so good to use. Just like amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And the things that SVG can do these days on browsers is also amazing. I look at people like Sarah Drasner.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, God, like, how is she doing those things? Like,
yeah, it's insane. And they're super light. The first thing that I noticed, like every time, like first time I was seeing this sort of transitions and animation, I was like, oh, this is gonna destroy the computer of a user because it's just too heavy. It's not possible. Instead, like opening the browser inspector is just like, they work, and it's all CSS based, not heavy on JavaScript, which is fantastic. And it gives like they're so like small, meaningful animation that they make the interaction, like the user, they make interact with your website in a more natural and enjoyable way. That, yes, it doesn't improve anything in terms of like technical requirements. It's not that your code is better with this. It's just the user is not bored as hell and has fun. Like he should have fun in using your website. It should be engaging, and it's I love it. It's fantastic. So definitely, like, it's hard to explain to a new developer, like a junior developer, why these small things, they matter a lot. And I'm noticing also on like recruitment websites or even on LinkedIn, the roles for UX or interaction designer are increasing. Like they're asking more and more for this specific role, just interaction design, which is all about this, because we noticed that, okay, there are so many websites, we need to stand out from the crowd. And this is kind of like the good way to go.
Yeah, and I mean, just nowadays, and it's 2018, we spend a lot of time online on our computers, on our phones, tablets, smart TVs. So, people are spending time on these websites, and if you can keep them on there longer, you can show more ads, you can get them to buy more products. Just there's a lot of good reasons to make your site fun and keep people engaged.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, next topic, which is super fun, and I love this. I don't want to like smash or like I don't want to talk shit about Windows, but it's so fun to do it, which I love it. It's just like they kind of like they want us to make fun of them, which is fantastic. But yeah, Windows recently switched to Git. Moved the entire code base of the Windows, the operating system, actually Microsoft switched to Git, put the entire code base of Windows on Git, and a total of 4 million commits with 10 million working items.
Yeah, that's... I can't fathom that. Yeah, I think at one point they had in team services where they switched from... Let me find my tab here. They had 80,000 accounts in team services. So 80,000 people either contributing code, managing pull requests, managing tickets. I mean, that is just, I mean, I've never worked on a team more than about 10 people. So I can't,
Well, it's easy for us to make fun of them because we're not in their situation. But like, I think from like with my really small knowledge about this, like I'm not an expert at all of just like how to build an operating system, how to manage an operating system. And it's 20 years old. Like, why the hell did you do this? Like, it's insane. I think it's a mind-blowing approach, like putting everything, your entire operating system on Git. And of course, like reading the articles and reading online other like reports and stuff, there were so many issues on doing this because Git, of course, works better if you have like, for the way Git was built for, like having small standalone portions of code, and then you do merging, rebasing, and then you have a master branch, and every developer is able to work on a specific section without interfering with anyone else. But instead, Microsoft put the entire source code 3.5 million files all in it. Like they have a 300 gigabyte repository.
Yeah.
And I heard, I don't know if it's in the article, but I talked with a couple of friends that they have more insights. Basically, they told me that a git status on a separated branch, it takes up to 10 minutes to complete. Just git status, you wait 10 minutes. They had to be like, Git had to build a sort of like interface layer on top of git status in order to allow them to do it like faster and not like crawl all the 3.5 million files. And they have these massive issues when 2 users at a time, they do a git rebase or they merge 2 branches at the same time, which with 80,000 developers, like how many developers did you say? Sorry.
Yeah, I think it was 80,000 counts on team services.
Yeah. So we 80,000 accounts. It will happen pretty much every minute that you have 2 users merging on the same repo or the same branch. It's nuts. It's like how
I can imagine like you spend probably an hour a day coding and the other 7 hours fixing conflicts, getting your pull requests actually working, and it's just insane. Like I can't imagine working in an environment like that.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And the thing that I love about this article are mostly the comments.
Yeah.
One of the best comments is like 1 million commits. Sticks out the pinky like what was like Mike Myers? No, what was the movie?
Austin Powers.
Austin Powers, exactly. 1 million commits. Like all these, Jesus. Yeah, all these other ones, like the issue is because Git wasn't intended for you to put, your entire operating system into one repository. You're supposed to split the pieces up a bit. It's which I don't know if it's actually possible, because I don't know the actual infrastructure or architecture of Windows. Is it possible to split it in like small standalone sections that you can work on it and then commit to a master branch or like a global branch, or you actually have to have the full code base in order to work on anything?
Yeah, that is a good point. I've never done any kind of like operating system development. But yeah, that is a really good point. If you can develop on a small portion of it, or if you really need everything, and what does everything really include? Does it include Microsoft Office products, or is it just the core operating system? Like it's what all is in there? It's a lot of files.
Yes. Oh my God. I don't know, man. It's just so sketchy. It's so weird. I know, like probably. I think it's a good step in the right direction, like not using outdated or stupid old technologies. Yeah, let's use Git because Git it's amazing, but they should use it in a proper way. But I understand that, okay, let's switch version control system and let's refactor our entire operating system in order to be separated in small files. Like, no, that's not doable. Of course, you will spend like 2 years probably in doing that. But yeah, I don't know, like it feels so weird. It feels like it's gonna add so many issues to it that I don't know what they were using before.
They were using Team Services, which is their own version control system. And I've used Team Services in the past, and it's fine. I prefer Git just because like there's so much more documentation on it and so much more like, oh, I screwed up, but what do I do? I can find that online a lot easier. Team Services is fine. It's they have their own kind of like their own GitHub. Like you can see issues, you can track things, you can do them in a Scrum fashion and move the cards around. So it's fine. I don't know why they didn't just stick with that since it's their own product. But
that's an interesting question that probably ties perfectly with our next topic, which is Microsoft and open source. So Microsoft,
this is an interesting one.
Microsoft in the past, I guess, 1 or 2 years is moving more and more towards adopting open source, even in their own products, even in like pretty much everything. Microsoft just recently is contributing $500,000 to the Open Source Foundation, and they have a guy that now is a chairman in the board of direction of the Open Source Foundation. They participated to the biggest Linux open source conference, and they were like the main speakers there. They're adopting open source technology to rebuild Azure, their server offers, and they just switched to Git and all this. Like, what's happening here?
I think Microsoft, they've always kind of been behind the curve on some things. I went to a meeting at the Microsoft office in Austin, Texas about 5 years ago when Windows 8 came out. And they were just like, they just pretty much invited a bunch of developers from the area. And they were just like, we're pushing the store. We want apps on the store. Mm-hmm. And at this point, the Google Android store already had millions of apps. The iPhone store had millions of apps. So they were really, I think they were trying to like, it was like this last ditch effort to save the Windows Phone. You know, they had the Windows Phone and they had this idea of like, well, we can make apps run on both the Windows and on the Windows Phone and on desktops, which is like, okay, that's cool. I can just develop for one thing and I can get on both platforms. Mm-hmm. But as a developer, and I look at, if I'm going to develop a mobile app, am I going to really spend time to build an app that's only going to work for, less than 5% of the population? Or am I going to write for, iPhone that has a much larger chunk? I'm going to make a lot more money spending the same amount of time for a larger audience. So they're behind then. And I think that after that kind of failed, they realized that the big move right now in technology is cloud. I mean, AWS and, it's all cloud technology. Everybody wants to, put stuff on the cloud. And I think they realized in order to compete, they needed to get their Azure service up and get a lot of customers. And the best way to do that is to make their stuff open so that you can write .NET apps using .NET Core, which is open source, put it on a Linux box on an Azure server, mm-hmm. and get all the Microsoft goodies from Azure, like all the regular Windows security if you're doing a Windows corporate app or something. Mm-hmm. So I think that it was all kind of a move to get people on Azure.
Yeah, definitely. Which is like, I totally agree with it, which is great. Like if you cannot defeat them, like adopt them, right? Like they cannot compete with open source, they cannot compete with Linux, and they finally mm-hmm. realize it. So, okay, let's use it. And also like it started all, I guess, with the Linux subsystem inside a Windows mm-hmm. machine, right? Now you can run Bash.
Yeah. They, I remember them talking about it. I was at a conference in, I think, 2015, when they were just rolling it out and they were showing it on projectors and everything. And it was like, oh, this is so cool because like I'm doing Windows development, but I want Linux tools. And it was like kind of like a best of both worlds, mm-hmm. I still prefer doing Linux development on a Linux machine, but it was, it was cool.
So probably they realized that PowerShell was trash. Why Bash is so easy? I'm like, well, it's better. It's just that overall it's like works better commands, it's more intuitive, mm-hmm. and it's faster. So like, okay, let's adopt it. It's kind of cool. Like I see the cool aspect about it, like a massive corporation finally like pouring money inside open source, mm-hmm. which is fantastic. I guess it will help pushing and improving the open source. A lot of projects. It's going to contribute a lot of cool projects. One of the most recent one that is kind of like skyrocketed online is like Microsoft Visual Studio Code, or VS Code. Mm-hmm. There is this open source Electron-based application IDE, sort of like code editor that you can turn into an IDE, which is fantastic. Like a lot of users are adopting it and they're using it, even on Linux computers. It's like multi-platform, it works everywhere. It's just marvelous. The thing that I'm afraid is that Microsoft doesn't have a good track record of being loyal to products that they acquire or things that they jump into it. They buy something, then they extend it for a bit, then they close it, and then they shut it down and implement it inside Windows. It's a sort of like, yeah, it's like it was repeated many times in history. Like that happened a lot. And one thing, if you want to just jump in the bandwagon of conspiracy theorists, you can check the Brian Lunduk video about Microsoft is buying open source. It's good. Like he says a lot of like alarmistic things and stuff like that, but is like a lot of things that he says I agree with him. It's just like ads, let me tell it. And it's highlighting all the stuff that he thinks is gonna happen because Microsoft now has the foot in the door, like has these massive decision power in the Linux Foundation and then open source foundation. And it's yeah, it's interesting to see what they're gonna do in the next few years. Already in like the recent Linux conference, they were the main panel and they had like a full day to showcase products that they were building and stuff like that. So yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I'm looking at their GitHub account and they have 1,678 repositories and 3,000 and almost 800 users, people like working on it.
Yeah, I mean, I know TypeScript really took off with Angular 2 because Angular really adopted TypeScript. And I mean, I still prefer just regular JavaScript, but you know, yeah, Visual Studio Code is their most popular one, and I mean, it's a great editor. I've used it. I really like it. .NET Core, it's really cool that they made .NET Core because I really liked working in .NET for a web API standpoint. I really liked C#, but dealing with Windows servers was always a pain.
Yes.
It was always expensive. It was always just a pain to deal with securities and just getting the IIS, which is like their version of like Apache, to just work correctly. It's like, just work. I just put my site up, you know. So now that they have .NET Core, which I haven't played with, you can actually write in C# and put it on a Linux box. So
interesting.
It's a cool move. It's something that's been on my checklist of like, I want to play with this one day, and it just, you know, I fell in love with Laravel, so it's moved further down my list.
Yeah. It's kind of confuses me. I always like Microsoft was for years and years just like the monolith against open source, and just everything that Microsoft does is closed source, like a majority from like where they grabbing majority of their money or their cash. It's closed source, like Xbox and Windows itself and all the other products like Office and Azure, everything is closed source. So now they're jumping in the open source thing and they're releasing sort of like a little bit of stuff, but they're building new products. Yeah, it's an interesting transition moment. I don't know. Are you scared that they could potentially arm open source and the Linux community, or it's kind of like a stupid thought?
to arm it?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Like kind of like, I wouldn't say like they will be able to basically like buy the entire open source and just like the entire Linux community, put it in their own software and just like close the Linux community or like make Linux closed source, but something similar. Do you think like something weird could happen?
I don't know. I mean, I think if they did something like that, it would upset, you know, the largest development community in the world. So, you know, I think if you upset that many developers, I'm sure a lot of those developers are using Azure as some kind of service at some point. So I don't know. I think that would be kind of a stupid move on their part, but I don't know. It's Microsoft, so.
Yeah, exactly. We could also say the same. It's kind of stupid to force updates of your machine while a computer is asleep, or resetting all the custom settings of a user every time they update a machine, or like in the background stealing user data without telling anyone. But Microsoft is doing that.
Yeah, that is true.
When does it end? Like, yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of like, I'm on the fence. I'm kind of like 50-50. It's super cool that Microsoft is investing a lot of money into open source, and I think it's going to push a lot of boundaries and it's going to improve a lot of aspects about Linux, but I'm also a little bit terrified because Microsoft is like, especially Windows, is a direct competitor of Linux. So like, what are you gonna actually work to improve Linux, or is just a strategy? Because if you improve Linux too much, then Windows will get affected negatively by these improvements. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Windows is always going to win in the corporate world. Corporations move very slowly and they're used to Windows, and I think you're not going to have large companies like where I work all of a sudden be like, everybody's going to be using Ubuntu, because people are going to be like, what is this? It looks different. I don't like it, So, so I don't know. I think that they're always going to have that huge corporate market share. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's hard to say. Let's see. We'll see next year where we're at. Like Linux doesn't exist anymore. Linus Torvalds was murdered by like randomly.
He just disappeared.
He disappeared like out of the blue. Okay, we ran we completed, like we finished all the topics of this amazing episode. It's more than an hour that we're talking and we're saying a lot of stupid things, but it's great. Let's talk a little bit about projects that we're working on. You said before the episode that you just switched to Elementary OS on your System 76 machine. So first, which System 76 computer do you have?
It is, I can actually show it.
Yay.
It's an older model. So right before the move, I had a laptop. It was about a 4-year-old HP that I had installed System 76 or installed Elementary on, and I had tried a few different distros for a while, and all of a sudden it just stopped working. Like there's corruption in the BIOS. So I was like, well, whatever. I was originally planning at the end of this year getting probably a new Gazelle or a Galago Pro.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I think I really want that one, but I wanted to wait till the end of the year. But with my laptop dying, I was like, I'm already spending all this money on this whole cross-country relocation and everything.
Yeah.
But I found this. This is an older model, Gazelle Pro.
Oh, nice.
I think it's about 5 years old, but it's got a quad core. It's got 8 gigs of RAM, which I'll probably expand.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was super easy to just like unhook the back, throw in a solid state drive. I did it in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so I put in a solid state drive, wiped it, put a new Elementary OS on it, and it's running amazing. Yeah. Nice. The only thing I can complain about is I'm going to replace the battery because it lasts like 40 minutes and then it dies.
Oh, well. Yeah, it's a 4 years old laptop, but hey, you can replace the battery, which is amazing, right?
Yeah, I can get one for like $35 online, and
you have a 5 hours last battery that it's like a new computer, right?
Yeah, and with shipping, I think I paid like right around $300 US. So it was something that I could do now, and I'm like, in another year, if I do want to get a newer model, then I can definitely do that then and then sell this one. But for now, it's a great little development machine, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's what I love about System 76. Even if like the major complaint that I'm seeing, and also some users that they follow me, they told me like, oh, that laptop looks ugly, it's bulky, it's not thin, it's not cool, it's not made of metal or aluminum.
This one is old, and it is quite. Yeah, it's quite thick. And pretty heavy. So yeah.
Look at that VGA port. So good.
Yeah. It does have HDMI too. So
it's exactly. It's fine. But the things that I love is just like, first, I kind of like try to not care anymore about the aspect, like about the aesthetic of thing. Yes, of course I want a cool laptop, but I'm not spending that much money just to have something that I can showcase and I can be cool in my pictures and when I work at a coffee shop. I need a machine that works, and I need a machine that after 2 or 3 years where it starts like jumping and having some issues, I can open and easily replace some parts and not spend other $2,000 on a new machine that gonna have the same problem after a year or two. So I love about this, about the System 76. Yeah, that's also why I was on the fence, like, do I get like the Dell XPS or a System 76? Because also Dell XPS, it's fantastic, looks super slick, but same issues, like super hard to open, super thin, limited number of ports, and you cannot replace the battery and all the other stuff. So do I want another piece of plastic that after 2 years I have to throw away or sell at a really, really low price?
Yeah, exactly.
Just creating all this garbage.
Yeah,
so
I'm super happy with it. I'll definitely buy another System 76 in the future.
Nice. And you're in the US, so it's way better for you. I have to pay a stupid amount for like delivery and crossing the border and fees and taxes. Just like, my fiance was not impressed when I decided to buy another computer. You want to buy? Yeah, but this is cool. That was the worst. So how's your experience with Elementary OS so far?
Yeah, so I've used Ubuntu a lot over the years, just kind of off and on. Really liked it, but I really like the GNOME operating system a little better in terms of like the aesthetics.
Yeah.
Not really a big fan of Unity. So I was trying Mint for a while, and then I know you kept talking about Elementary, so I was like, all right, whatever. It's Linux. I can just throw it on a flash drive, plug it in, and it runs. So,
yeah.
Played with it, and now I've got it on my my desktop, my tower, and also on this laptop. So I'm really loving it, and it's really fast. Like I feel like it just runs very fast.
Yeah, I love it, and I think it runs super smoothly because it's a C. Basically, it's built in Vala. Like the entire desktop environment is built in Vala. I know, like I really like the GNOME desktop environment as well. It's like feels way better and more intuitive for me than other desktop environments. But the thing is that it's built in JavaScript, which is like stupid slow. It's like, why you build a desktop environment is JavaScript? This is insane. Instead, the developers, the Elementary OS, they built in Vala, which spits out in C, I guess, or C++. Not 100% sure. But you notice the difference, even with an old laptop that doesn't have the best RAM ever, best CPU, it still like runs pretty smooth. And Elementary OS has also the example of a good operating system, which is split in different small parts. Is not one gigantic source code. Everything like the desktop environment is formed by like the wing panel. That is the thing that launches the application. Then has the plank, that is the bottom bar. Then has Gala, that is the window manager. Everything is like small applications. They interface with the core-based architecture and they work nicely, which is super cool. Oh, it's way easier to manage.
Pulling up their GitHub right now, and it's cool that they have like, their app center is their own separate repository. The wallpapers, like all these things are all separated. So I mean, the music player, everything is all separated. It's really nice and easy to just see the code that you need to modify if you want to contribute.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't get lost, and you have way less issues like in merging or even I don't know how many developers, like main developers, are working. I think they have like 3 or 4 people top working full time. Everyone else is like contributing or doing something part-time or submitting apps. But because the code is so well separated and well organized, you can literally just like tap a single, like you find a bug, you can go in the repository of that specific section and fix the bug without affecting the massive 300 gigabytes, 3.5 million files of the operating system. It's way more manageable in the long run, way more scalable. Awesome. So from my hand, just to conclude the episode, then I'm gonna start cooking some lunch because I'm starving. I'm recording a lot of tutorials for WordPress. I want to finish the plugin development series as soon as possible because I'm kind of tired. I reached the point where I built the infrastructure of the plugin and there's nothing new to show. It's all about let's reuse the same controllers, let's reuse the same components, and let's build the taxonomies, and let's build the widgets, and let's build it. It's a bit of like repeated code. There's not a more like exciting stuff to showcase. So I'm trying to speed up a little bit to conclude it. And then I was planning to start a Laravel series, like introduction to Laravel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's see how it goes. It's I'm kind of like finding difficult for me to make it super simple, because Laravel at first it can be overwhelming. There are like so many folders, and you have the regular MVC structure, and then you have the events, and then you have the listeners, and then you have the filters, and then the helpers, and then you have like all so like broadcasting, like so many different things that for a new developer is like what the fuck, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I need to like I'm structuring the series to just be like simple, like where do you go, what are these folders, and if you do have to do something really, really simple, let's follow 1, 2, 3 steps, which is kind of challenging, because sometimes I give for granted that like, okay, you create a controller with Artisan and you use Artisan to run a migration, and it's okay, it works, it's so easy, you know? But when I started using Laravel 3 years ago, it was like so overwhelming. It's like, oh, what the hell.
Yeah, if you're not used to building like full-scale applications, it's a lot of new topics, and yeah, there's a lot to Laravel. I mean, it's in terms of making an app, it's very simple. Like once you really understand the concepts, it's like I can just put this together so fast, it's amazing. But yeah, like breaking it down to very little pieces is I'm sure a very difficult task.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure I'm gonna fail miserably. I'm gonna release the first couple of videos and no one's like, this is wrong, you're saying wrong things. Oh, I'm sorry. It's gonna be tough. The other thing that I'm doing, I'm keep trying to build Akira, the UX design application for Linux, which is so horribly hard. I'm like losing my mind. I spent probably 3 weeks just to build the layer panel, and it's almost done. I needed it's insane how when you switch and when you change, you don't do any more like web development and you do software development. It's so hard in terms that nothing works. You have to take care of every single aspect. Like with JavaScript online, if you want to build a list that you can drag and drop and reorder the list, is like really 20 seconds. There are so many packages, like script that you can use, and automatically the script, JavaScript, is pretty smart to know that, okay, if you want to reorder and then you scroll with the mouse while you're dragging, you should scroll and keep dragging. And then when you drop it, you should reorder the other things that are on top and then put it where you dropped it. But with software developer, that the software doesn't know that. You have to tell it it's exactly, God, a lot of math. So hard.
Oh yeah, it's been a while since I've done any kind of desktop development. I like the web so much better.
Oh my God, it's so easy. Like web development, so easy. Now I understand why when I started doing web development, I was talking with software engineers. They were like kind of laughing, like, oh yes, web, it's easy. I was like, oh, you're just being dicks. No, they're right. Web is easy. But yeah, I'm trying. Like almost done. The layer panel should like probably another couple of days, and finger crossed it should be done. And then I will start building the actual canvas to draw things. And if that works, I can hook it up to the layer panel. I will release the first alpha version to test, which I don't know. It's awesome. So I think it's gonna take me like a year. I don't know. Like it's a little bit over my head, this project. Like I didn't think through when I started it. Like, yeah, I'm gonna build it. No, I'm not good at this. But yeah,
you're just ambitious.
Yeah, or crazy, or like I do, like I should stop doing cocaine or stuff like that. No, I don't. Okay. Well, I think it's pretty much it for this episode. Do you have something to plug in? Like, where can we find you? What new videos are you gonna publish on your YouTube channel? Something you want to announce?
Yeah, I'm still continuing the Tailwind WordPress theme series. I've got one on an animation series doing animations in CSS. So I have a lot to do there. I do have a video coming out tomorrow on Laravel, and it's not really for beginners. It's more of just like, I was like, hey, I want to add this feature to an existing application, so I'm just going to record myself and put it out there.
Nice.
So,
awesome.
So yeah, I added a Slack notification to kickoffwp.com. So when somebody signs up, I just get a notification. So it was super easy because Laravel is awesome. So yeah, that video will be up, I believe, tomorrow. But yeah, you can find me at chrisperko.net. You found me on Twitter, chrisjperko, or here on YouTube.
Awesome. Fantastic. Oh, as usual, all the links will be in the description below the video, including, I guess, all the links of the articles and topics we talked about during this podcast. Honestly, I need to start doing like timestamps of the topics. I never do that because it's so boring and I just like, I don't want to do it. But like with an hour and plus minutes of podcast, I need to do timestamps. But yeah, okay, thank you so much, Chris, and thank you guys for watching this video. If you're on YouTube or listen this podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell us if you want us to talk about another topic or something else, and happy coding.
Happy coding. Have a good one.